Welcome back to Good Morning LaLa. And on Wealth Wednesday, we need to feed our soul as well. Shannon Algeo is in the house. He's an author, podcaster. Feed our soul? Soul feed.
Soul feed.
Soul feed. There you go.
Soul feed. Yeah.
Dyslexia kicking in. How are you, handsome?
I'm good. How are you? I'm so excited to be talking to all three of you.
I
excited
know.
to have you on.
So Wanderlust recently noted you 35 under 35.
That happened.
That's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, I was really surprised and honored to be on that list. I know many people on that list, and I'm like totally inspired by so many of them. So I was like super honored to be included.
What does it take to make that list?
Right.
What do you think you did right?
Yeah, I think just from showing up continually over the years, we've done something like 200, almost 230 podcast episodes and interviews, and I've had the chance to speak at Wanderlust several times over the years. And so I think like when you show up and you do your best and you inspire people, then sometimes something like that gets thrown your way and you get acknowledged, which as an entrepreneur, it meant a lot to me because you do a lot of self-validation and self-acknowledgement that every once in a while it's nice for someone to say, hey, you're doing a great job.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Most of the coaches we worked with and spiritual teachers and that have had a dark moment, something that really set them on this path. What was that for you?
Well, it wasn't just one. I find on the spiritual journey, they come up in cycles, and there's this dance between the shadow and the light. A recent one, actually, recent-ish, was when I moved to Los Angeles. I moved across the country from New York with my ex, and at the time we were dating. We moved in together. We set up this whole life together, and then the relationship ended like 3 months in. And then I found myself, I didn't have the ground that I had in New York City, like this foundation of where I live and where I'm from and my clients and my family. And so rebuilding myself in Los Angeles, literally my whole world got flipped around. So that was one. And also when I was 22, when I first moved to New York City, I was working in a restaurant on the Upper West Side. And I didn't know how to make money. I didn't know how to make enough money. I was figuring out how to pay rent and also how to eat. And like, do you have to choose one or the other?
Totally.
But those moments send you so deep inside of yourself. And I found in those moments that those are the moments where I said, I've got to look for the light. There's got to be a glimpse of light somewhere in the shadow. And that has given me such faith and courage to find the light no matter what comes up.
Love that.
How do you define faith?
That's a beautiful question. Faith is not needing proof.
Gorgeous.
Faith is saying, no matter what is coming up right now, I am going to believe that this is happening for my highest good and the highest good of all.
I love that.
Love
Signs
that.
follow, they don't proceed.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. So true.
And that's when you need the faith.
Yes.
So how do you maintain that? How do you walk in faith?
I'm like, yes. I'm like, ask me this question. That's so good. I think there, to be human is to be vulnerable, and we all want certainty because certainty gives us that sense of safety and security, which we all deserve, and we get to create that in our lives. To walk in faith, though, is to say, I don't know what's going to happen, and I am riding the wave of this life, and I trust that whatever comes my way, I do have the resources internally, the support, and the hope to find that next step, to move into that next phase. And it's not just about me saying, okay, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to make happen, although that is part of the process. It's also allowing myself to become all that I'm capable of becoming, and I sometimes might not know what that looks like.
Yeah.
Has any of that shocked you now?
Yes. I was recently in Israel, and I was going to visit a friend who is doing some really powerful peace activism there and starting a podcast interviewing people. I didn't really know quite why I was going, other than I felt really inspired by the work that she's doing, and she's a dear friend. She's like family. And while I was there, I ended up doing an interview with a Arab Palestinian Christian who lives in Bethlehem, who's a peace activist, and he's bringing Germans and Jews and Palestinians together to look at healing trauma that's been perpetuated throughout the ages. And I had no idea how much I cared about I knew I cared about peace, but looking at the conflict that's going on there helped me see so much of the conflict that I've experienced in my own life and the conflict that we're seeing happen here in the US. So there are moments where I'm not expecting to be transformed, and then I just do one thing, and then life like polishes me into this new phase.
So true. So speaking of podcasts, Soul Feed, there's tons of podcasts these days. It seems like everybody's doing podcasts. Tell us what's different and unique about yours and what people can expect listening in.
Yeah, so our podcast, my podcast used to be our podcast. I started it with a co-host back in New York about almost 5 years ago. So I would say that is one thing that's different about it. We started it 5 years ago, like a little bit before podcasting was as normalized, although there were tons of podcasts when we started. So that gave us an advantage to start interviewing people. Our first interviews were with Marianne Williamson and Deepak Chopra.
Good place to start.
Yeah.
A really good place to start. Yeah.
And that was like, that was so meaningful to us. At the time, I think we were 26. So to have Marianne Williamson as our first interview and then Deepak shortly after that, that allowed us to hold a higher vision for what we wanted this podcast to be. And so I think what makes Soul Feed unique is that we're not only, or I should say, I'm not only looking at feeding my soul for the benefit of me, but to actually have your soul fed and nourished, we need to look at how our personal development is informing our collective development. So what is our personal responsibility in what's happening in our world?
So true. So rumor has it that you just married someone, and I have a question for you. So you're not a real, you can get a license to marry someone, but is there any chance, are you thinking you might want to become a minister?
I don't know.
Not to put you on the spot. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think for me, I some days I wake up and I'm like, I want to be more involved in politics and run for office. Some days I wake up and I'm like, I want to take my online course to the next level. Some days I wake up and so I just kind of let myself explore these different facets of who I am. And I personally don't feel like I need to be an official minister, although
this is your ministry. It's all your ministry, yeah. That's so cool. Yeah.
So tell everyone where they can find and follow your personal journey and tune into your podcast.
Yeah, so the podcast is Soul Feed. It's on iTunes, it's on Spotify. It's Soul Feed, all one word. You can find us on iTunes. I'm Shannon.Algeo on Instagram, and I'm Shannon Algeo on Twitter. And that's where you can find me, shannonalgeo.com, to learn about some of my programs and courses as well.
Love it.
So exciting.
Thank
so
you so much.
Thank you. Yes,
Stay
thank you
tuned
for having
for
me.
that.
Yes.